A few years ago, I was hospitalized, quite a few years ago, for a depressive episode and suicidal ideation. And the doctor at this hospital kind of took one look at me and my chart and decided that as a woman of color, as a woman with a history of trauma, that really my issue was that I had borderline personality disorder and I was not using the coping skills I'd been taught. I tried really hard to explain to him that I'd had years of CBT and DBT coping skills, and that the reason I was in the hospital wasn't because I wasn't using my coping skills, but the problem was beyond the scope of the coping skills I had anymore. But he was not open to discussion. And I think that's a huge part of the stigma. A lot of women of color are given the borderline personality diagnosis and considered manipulative and dishonest and malingering and sort of exaggerating their illnesses. And there's very little connection to like the realities of trauma. And so it doesn't really get properly diagnosed, and we don't get properly treated, and we're not really seen as human beings. We're just like I said, that checkbox of like, oh, she fits all these characteristics, therefore this is her diagnosis. And once you have that diagnosis, it stays with you. I have not been able to get that borderline personality diagnosis off of my record since that time 10 years ago when I was hospitalized. I think I've been really lucky in that I've had a lot of resources given to me in my life. So I'm a woman of color, but I grew up in a white family, and sometimes I use that cross culture to my advantage, because when I talk to people on the phone, they don't realize I'm a woman of color. And I've been able to make more progress on the phone than I have in person. When people see me in person, their demeanor changes. So some of that is like resources I've had just because of growing up. I've had a great education, and I have a lot of training as like a peer support specialist, and now in school for art therapy. And so I have a lot of resources to be able to say like, whoa, this doesn't make any sense, this isn't okay, and kind of stand up against it. But like, that is exhausting work. Early on, I really blamed myself for my mental illness. I didn't really understand even that I had like a mental illness, and that an illness is like a brain disorder. Like, it's just like any other medical illness. And I really fought against having a mental illness because I already felt the stigma of like, oh, you need to go to therapy. Oh, you were hospitalized. Like, the more information people found out about me in terms of like the treatment of my mental illness, the more stigmatized I was. And I blamed it all on myself, thought it was just a defect. And I hated myself. But I have made so much progress since my daughter was born 20 years ago on like learning to love myself, learning to accept my illness, learning to accept what is part of my illness and what's really the system's problem. And I won't take it on me. I was first exposed to peer support when I came into recovery. And I was in a Medicaid program that allowed lots of different alternative therapies, including art therapy, which was huge for me. And also I got a peer support specialist assigned to me. And I'd never heard of such a thing. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with this person. But this person came to my home and talked to me on such a different level. And they said, you know, I've been in your shoes. I've been in your boat. I'm doing so much better now. I'm working. This is what I do for my work. And how can I help you? And it was this exposure to the idea of mutual aid. Like, people with lived experience can help other people with lived experience as a condition of the body that requires treatment. So having a behavioral health clinician, peer support, all that, working alongside the doctor, and really making it accessible for more people to get to have help from other people with lived experience and from behavioral health clinicians, and have their doctor on board and everybody doing like the same work.